Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Lieutenant Governor Susan Bysiewicz, and I'd like to welcome you to East Lyme's Korean era and Vietnam veteran recognition ceremony. We are so honored to have 100 veterans with us today, so let us give them a round of applause. So if you are able, would you please stand because we are going to start this ceremony with a presentation of the colors, and the members of the East Lyme Police Department, the Niantic Legion Post 128, and VFW Post 5849 will be posting the colors. And if you are able, if you could, remain standing for the posting of the colors, the singing of our national anthem, and the Pledge of Allegiance. So please post the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
And please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, but and we just want to say thank you to Cameron and Jane. They are students at East Lyme High School for that beautiful rendition of our country's national anthem. And I'd like to invite Veterans Representative Brian Burridge to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
And salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, please be seated. So I want to start with a thank you to our host, First Selectman Dan Cunningham, who was just so enthusiastic and excited about hosting the ceremony today. And it took a lot of work from him and folks at the town hall to bring us all together. And I wanted to share with you that some people think there might be a list somewhere in Washington, D.C. or in Hartford of all of the veterans who have served our country. There is no such list in Washington or in Hartford, and in fact, the best list of who served in our United States military is in each town hall in the state, because that's where the town clerks keep the DD-214 discharge papers on file, and it's also where the tax assessors keep all of the records regarding veterans' property tax exemptions. So I want to thank the First Selectman and everyone at Town Hall that helped bring us all together today. And we are here today as a result of a journey that I was on between 2008 and 2010. And during those years, I was Secretary of the State, and we visited 140 towns across Connecticut, including this town, to recognize and say thank you to our World War II veterans. And I had the great privilege of meeting more than 15,000 World War II veterans, and I am so delighted that we did that, because sadly we have lost so many of our greatest generation. Along the way, meeting those folks who'd served in World War II, many who served toward the end of World War II also served in the Korean War, and we started then a journey of recognizing Korean War veterans, and we have now been to more than 120 towns to honor Korean War veterans and visited more than 105 towns to recognize and welcome home our Vietnam veterans. So today we have the pleasure of honoring, I believe, one Korean War veteran and many Vietnam veterans who have joined us today. And there are some very strong similarities between the Korean War and the Vietnam War. One was that both wars presented some very challenging conditions. In the Korean War, there were some of the coldest winters that were on record, and there were weeks of sub-zero temperatures, and unfortunately, many of our American soldiers were ill-equipped with the clothing and the equipment that they needed to be comfortable in those very cold conditions. They were also often outnumbered. There was an author by the name of David Halberstam who wrote a book about the Korean War. It was called The Coldest Winter, and here's what he said. No matter the bravery they showed or the validity of their cause, the soldiers of Korea had been granted a kind of second-class status compared to the men who had fought in previous wars. And what Halberstam was referring to was the fact that at the end of World War II, there were huge parades and celebrations and thank yous to recognize the returning World War II veterans. And unfortunately, the Korean War was never officially declared, and it was never officially ended, so that many of the soldiers returned home not to any kind of celebration and fanfare. Also, of course, the Vietnam veterans returned home to some very difficult situations. Protests about the war. Some veterans were told not to wear their uniforms because it could make them a target. Many of our returning Vietnam soldiers were called unspeakable names or spat upon or were greeted by protesters. And so we learned a very important lesson from our Vietnam veterans, and that's that no matter what we might think of a particular war, the politics of it, the leaders who sent our soldiers there, but we must always, always support the men and women who have put their lives on the line so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we are so privileged to have in our country, the freedom to elect our leaders, to speak as we choose, to worship as we choose, and to live in freedom. The other thing that I think is very important to recognize is both our Korean veterans and our Vietnam veterans are people who, to the person, never stopped serving. They may have stopped their military service, but they never stopped serving our state or this beautiful community. I've had the privilege to meet so many people who have, after their military service, volunteered with different nonprofit organizations, who volunteered in VFW or other veterans organizations to help returning veterans. And this service, I think, is something that unites both of our Korean and our Vietnam veterans. Our Vietnam veterans had some very challenging circumstances that they had to face, especially if they were in combat. There was very high jungle heat, monsoon rains, exposure to toxic chemicals that I think is something that made it extremely difficult for our veterans there. There's also very intense urban combat. And so that is why it is so important that we have these ceremonies to finally say welcome home to our veterans, because sadly you did not receive the recognition and the thanks that you should have when you returned. It is also, I think, a time to remember how many people we have lost. We lost more than 58,000 of our military service members in Vietnam, and those are the names that are inscribed in the marble monument in Washington, D.C. And here in Connecticut, unfortunately, we have lost more than 600 of our Korean veterans, and we had a total of 39,000 Korean veterans that we lost in America. We remember the 612 people from Connecticut who died in Vietnam, and there were 2 East Lyme residents who lost their lives. Please join me in honoring John Michael Bath and Donald Kevin Walsh. Those are the 2 young men who were lost in Vietnam. So I wanted to share with you, to end my remarks, something that President Obama said in 2012 at his memorial address in front of the Vietnam Veteran Memorial. He said this: "When you returned home, you looked out for one another. You cared for one another. People weren't talking about PTSD at the time, but you understood it and you were there for one another. And just as importantly, you didn't just take care of your own, You cared for those that followed. You made it your mission to make sure that today's troops get the respect and support that all too often you did not receive. So that is the very important lesson that we learned from our Vietnam veterans. So I want to say thank you to all of our veterans, and most importantly, welcome home. The state of Connecticut will always remember and appreciate the sacrifice that you have made for our country and for our freedom. So God bless each of our veterans, our beautiful state, and our great nation. Thank you so much. And it's my pleasure to introduce the person who is in charge of taking care of the 131,000 United States military veterans that we have here in Connecticut, and it's our Commissioner of Veterans Affairs, Ron Welch. Commissioner.
Can you hear me in the back? Okay. So good afternoon, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you, Bysiewicz. Thank you very much for your kind words. And once again, thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join and recognize the service and sacrifice of the veterans and family members that are here with us today. To First Selectman Cunningham and State Senator Marx and other elected officials that join us, thank you very much for your time. To those of you that served in Korea, Vietnam, or in support of either one of those wars, welcome home. And these are really the words you should have heard when you got back on American soil or finished your time in military service. We know that didn't happen. History shows us that. Let me share with you that my oldest son, Steve, I was hoping he would be able to join us tonight. I don't see him. But the reason that Steve and I joined the military was because of every one of you. You were and are our mentors, our friends, and our heroes. And, you know, I had the fortunate experience to go to high school in this town. This is a fantastic town, very supportive of the military. And I couldn't help but think about a couple of people that really stood out when I was a young person getting ready to go in the military. And the first one is Heinz Carl. I don't know if anybody remembers him. Silver Star, Purple Heart. I worked with him when I was a young kid at Niantic Plumbing. Another gentleman, Lou Ernst, United States Navy. He was worked at Rice's Sail Loft with me, and he was also an American Legion baseball coach forever. Dick North, Richard North, was the athletic director right here at this high school for many years, and also a phys ed teacher and a coach. Mike Devaney, Coast Guard Academy officer, and also a math teacher here. He was a crew coach, and he led our team to win the New Englands in 1978 and go on to take second in the Nationals down in D.C. Joe Perkins, United States Marine Corps Vietnam vet, former retired state police officer, and also a brigadier general in the Connecticut National Guard, and he was the deputy commissioner of the organization I work for, Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs. Mark Worthington was an English teacher right upstairs. He was an Army veteran and a football coach. And then the last two, I want to mention Dave Hausman right here. Dave, thank you very much for your service. Dave lived right next door with his family. And my late stepdad, John O'Neill, he served in the Army National Guard, and he was the owner of one of the businesses in town, Sailmaker, and very, very supportive. He hired a lot of veterans in his lifetime. So as young kids, we ran around over in the southeastern part, over Mystic, Ledyard, and Groton. We ran around the woods, and we pretended to be you. We built foxholes. We climbed trees. We climbed the hills. We got down in the streams and the swamps, and we pretended, like I said, to be soldiers and sailors and Marines, airmen. Space Force didn't exist back then, so we couldn't have done that. But it all depended on what day it was, who we wanted to be. Our uniforms and equipment many times included Sears and Roebuck double knee, tough skin jeans. We had jean jackets, we had slingshots, we had Red Ryder BB guns, and Mattel M16 rifles. One or two of us might have had a grenade launcher with us. My older brother and I would listen to the amazing stories that our Uncle Bob Welch would talk about his time on the ground in Korea as a young Marine Corps corporal. And he described those conditions Lieutenant Governor talked about, the freezing cold, some of the most rugged terrain on the face of the earth, and being undermanned and not equipped properly, and just pressing on with a mission and trying to take care of the Marines that were underneath his charge. He was awarded a Silver Star and a Purple Heart, and he struggled the rest of his life. And unfortunately, the help that's out there now and available to all of us, it wasn't there then. We'd also watch the evening news to see what was going on in that foreign land called Vietnam. Ironically, I enlisted right out of this high school. I left as soon as I could in 1978, and I went on a path to become an Army Airborne Ranger. I was trained by drill sergeants, airborne and ranger instructors, and I was able to serve in one of the 2 ranger units at the time, led by primarily combat veterans. We were not pampered. We were trained very hard in the most extreme environments. The Cascade Mountains out west going up to over 14,000 feet, jungles down in Panama, the Arctic in Minnesota and Alaska, the desert out in the west coast, out in the Mojave Desert. And we did our missions by land, sea, and air. We were held accountable for getting the mission done, though we be the lone survivor, just like our Ranger Creed says. This upbringing enabled, I would say, me and our team of joint members to survive in the highly contested eastern portion of Afghanistan for a year. And I'd say throughout a lot of significant challenges over nearly 40 years of being in the military, starting out as a private in the trenches and serving as a general officer before I retired. So I really owe you and your peers for that, because nobody can do that alone. You have to be surrounded by a lot of really, really good people that know what they're doing and pull you and push you along. So now I want to get back to September. This past September was the 23rd anniversary of the longest war in our history. Lieutenant Governor and Governor Lamont were down at Sherwood Island, and we were looking right in the faces of some of the family members that lost loved ones when the towers were hit. It's just heartbreaking. So that 23rd anniversary didn't end the war the way we thought it was going to end. We knew it had to come to a close. We just didn't picture it closing out that way. So some things now are really triggering, thinking back on that and thinking back on what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and Israel with the Hamas, and Iran's in the position they normally are, antagonizing a lot of situations. So many of you know firsthand that after war, in your military service, whether you were in war or not, sometimes can be a difficult transition back into normal life. Isolation and suffering and silence isn't the answer. It's never too late to ask for help. When a therapist closes the door, it's between you and that therapist. It's 100% confidential. And I'd encourage you, regardless of what your experiences were or how old you are now, to take advantage of that. And what we have down at Connecticut Department of Veterans Affairs are 4 core missions. We have a skilled care facility. It's basically a highly rated nursing home with 125 beds. We have family housing for right now 5 families. It's max capacity, but we're expanding that to about 12 families. And we have space for individual veterans for 150, and we're expanding that by 46 more spaces. We also, very important for you, our Office of Advocacy in Waterbury, Fairfield, Milford, Newington, and Norwich. Every June we do municipal vet rep training. I think there's one here in the audience that is a municipal vet rep from town. Yes, thank you very much, Brian. Great job you do every day. That's the person you want to connect with. That's the person that can help you make connections with the things you've earned, tax benefits, and the local social services, transportation, health services, food pantries, housing, employment, those kinds of things. The PAC Act, you probably have heard through Brian about the PAC Act. We've added, the federal VA's added about 2 million people are now getting health care and other benefits that hadn't got them before the PAC Act was put in place. Connecticut, our team of veteran service officers is taking care of a little more than 9,000 people. We know we have a lot more work to do. That's generated $188 million back to the individual veterans and their family members. So again, I cannot encourage you enough. If you've ever been injured or ill, please see one of those veteran service officers. And finally, we have memorial services in Rocky Hill and in the State Vet Cemetery in Middletown. So once again, thank you for your service, thank you for your sacrifice, and all that your families have been through. Remember, you're not alone, and best wishes to you and your family during the holiday seasons. Thank you very much.
Commissioner, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to bring up the host of the ceremony today, First Selectman Dan Cunningham. Thanks so much for having us.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. So good afternoon and welcome to everyone that's here. Thank you to our veterans. You know, I want to thank Susan she came to me a month or two after I was elected, sworn into office, and with this idea for the ceremony, and thought, you know, will you get on board with it? And I just thought it was wonderful, and I was so happy to be a part of it. So I want to thank Susan Bysiewicz, and I want to thank Ronald Welch. Thank you for your service and your comments today, and all that you've done, and along with everyone here. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Sandy Anderson, my secretary, that was engaged so much in calling you and making sure everybody got here. And yes, thank you. And Brian Burridge, what a great resource he is to everyone in this community. So thank you, Brian. You know, I was trying to think, what could I say here that's really relevant to this audience? And I thought back to what has my interaction been in life with veterans. And I thought of two or three. And I go back, my first recollection of a veteran was when I was in Cub Scouts. And this is probably 1961, 2 or 3. And I grew up in Elmwood, which was a little community, part of West Hartford, near Hartford. And we had a Cub Scout den. And the den mother, her husband, his name was George Hartunian. And George had served, I believe he had served in the Korean conflict. And what I remember about him and about the family was one of the things we couldn't do. We couldn't play with firecrackers and light off firecrackers because it really upset their dad. And I didn't understand. I was 7 or 8 years old. And the other thing was, I remember him sitting in the living room at their home, and he had these terrible ailments with his legs. He really suffered with his legs. And then the other thing I remember was he talked very loud, and whenever he would talk, it was, and what I realized was he was in the artillery. Artillery? Did I get that right? And I believe he had a shrapnel wounds on his legs. And I'm quite certain now, in retrospect, that he suffered from PTSD. And that's why we could never use firecrackers or things that made loud noises, because it really triggered him. And the thing that I remember the most was, in that family, the respect. There were 3 boys and the mother. The respect that they had for their father, for George Hartunian, the great respect they had for him and his service. And that was my first experience with a veteran. And then the other thing I would mention is I'm a selectman, and I serve with another selectman. His name is Jason Diebel. And he and I are in a little rock and roll band, you know. And one of the things we did this summer, we played at Rocky Hill at the Veterans Hospital. And we were entertainment for the veterans there. And I got to tell you, I mean, we've played a number of gigs, you know, over the years in different places. Best audience we've ever had. I want to go back, you know, in the spring and go there again and entertain. You would have thought it was the Rolling Stones showing up for these guys. I mean, they were just, oh, you're like a real band. We finally got a real band playing for us. And they were so excited for us to entertain them. And there was one guy that was over 100 years old, so he must have been an older World War II vet. And that we all, you know, after the concert, we were packing up our gear. We were saying that was the best show and the most enjoyable concert, you know, show that we ever did. And so I can't wait to get back there and entertain those guys up there again, and so appreciative. So in closing, I just want to thank everybody here, and proud to be part of this ceremony today. So thank you very much.
Dan, thank you so much. And our final speaker is State Senator Martha Marx. She is the Senate Chair of the Veterans Committee. So if you have any ideas or issues, she is the leader that you want to speak to. So speaking on behalf of the East Lyme delegation, State Senator Martha Marx.
Hi, everybody, and welcome home to our Vietnam and Korean veterans. Being your state senator is such a privilege, but when I found out 2 years ago that I was going to be chair of Veterans and Military Affairs, I was a little nervous because I'm a nurse, a mom. My parents were both veterans, but they died pretty young. I didn't know that much about what they went through, but I knew I was going to learn a lot and that I was going to love it. One of the first ceremonies that I went to was the Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Ceremony in Rocky Hill that they have every year. It's at the end of March. And it was so moving and so beautiful. And I came home and I said, there just weren't a lot of people there, right, to get to Rocky Hill. It's a little hard. And I said, I want to bring a Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans program to every town in Connecticut. And people said to me, too late, Lieutenant Governor Bysiewicz already does it. So, and of course she does, because that's the kind of woman and leader that she is. So as a visiting nurse, I'm a visiting nurse. I have taken care of many, many Vietnam veterans. I have sat in a room of a hotel in New London with an unhoused Vietnam veteran, could only, you know, had a wheelchair, going from the bed to the wheelchair in a hotel room, because that's the housing that we had for him for almost 2 years. He was one of my favorite patients. And it was right when the war in Ukraine was starting, and he had the TV on, and they started having, you know, they had some blasts and some ammunition, and he had a PTSD attack. It's the first time I ever saw it. It's sad, it's hard. It's hard for the caregivers, so for all of the caregivers and loved one and family members that are here, I thank you. I'm sorry we didn't say welcome home the way we were supposed to. I was in 4th grade when the Vietnam War ended. I can remember Miss Linda Dixon telling us that the Vietnam War were over. I remember it very vividly. So I think we have to continue, right, to always say that welcome home and to never forget what happened in the Vietnam and Korean War. If you haven't read the book, The Women, about the nurses in the Vietnam War, wow is all I can say. I listened to it on audio, and it was unbelievable. And we just have to continue to tell the story. And so in March, there is a ceremony in Rocky Hill, and if I would love to have, let's find some carpools and bring some people up there, because it's great. Commissioner Welch, so when you become chair, then you have to learn everything, right? And so I knew some of the DVA benefits, but I went to visit the nursing home and the housing up in Rocky Hill. It is beautiful. It is that nurse, I've been to a lot of nursing homes, and nurses are picky. I was blown away by that nursing home. So if you have loved ones that don't have a place or are finding it hard, reach out to me, reach out to First Selectman Cunningham. He can give you my number, and we can help you. I will say there's one thing I didn't get done last year in Veterans and Military Affairs as far as legislation goes, and that's about having the DVA non-pension, the non-service pension. Right now, if you get that, it counts towards your income. So then when you go to apply for other needs-based benefits, because you get that small pension, then you might not get Medicaid, right? A little silly if you ask me. So I got it farther than anybody else did. Senator Formica worked very hard on that. And so, you know, I took up the fight, and I am determined this year. I can't promise, but I'm hoping that I can do it. And we just need to keep saying welcome home as much as we can, and we thank you all for all that you did for us. Thank you.
Okay, so the good news is the political speeches are over, and now the best part is hearing from our veterans. And I know that all of you were taught never to volunteer. That usually wasn't the smart thing to do when you're in the military, but what we would love to do is have some of our veterans perhaps share where they served, what they did, something they learned, share a story. And I have been to more than 100 towns, and no one left me with the microphone all by myself. So who would like to start? Oh, yes, thank you for being the first one. Say who you are, please.
My name is Al Tede. I'm a submariner. And during the Vietnam War, you know, we talked about the soldiers and the Marines. I was on a submarine, and I patrolled off the coast of Vietnam. And our job then was to watch what was going on, monitor what's going in. So we were part of the Vietnam War. But one thing we got to remember also, there was a Korean War, there was the Vietnam War, but also during that time, us submariners had to fight the Cold War. And we can never, you know, forget the Cold War. Us submariners, we did a lot. If you notice, a submariner doesn't wear many ribbons because we're known as the silent service. We did a hard job, a silent job during the Vietnam War. We fought not only the Vietnam War, we fought the Cold War. So we got to remember that also.
Nicely done. Thank you for being the first one. That was great. Would you like to speak, sir? Okay.
I love that you're talking about Vietnam.
Right, sure.
I'm a retired Marine. I spent 4.5 years fighting in Vietnam. I was there in 1964, 65, 66, part of 68, 69, 70, and 75. I was part of the evacuation of Saigon and the American Embassy. I risked my life 3 times in Vietnam, saving my Marines. It's been 60 years, and I'm still waiting for my medals. But I go to the sub base every week, and I live here in Niantic, down by the water. I retired from the Marine Corps in 1983. Met my wife when I was stationed at the sub base, and I was a Marine on duty there, and she worked from dispersant. And I said, I'm going to marry that girl one of these days. And we've been married for 60 years.
So you forgot to say who you were.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm Gunnery Sergeant James McCormick, retired United States Marine.
All right. Thank you so much. That was great. All right. All right. I'm going to just go back here, and then I'm going to come to this side again. So I'm not going to miss anybody who wants to talk. So anybody over here? Okay.
John DeSantis was in Vietnam, 1967. Tet Offensive, What was it? 4th Infantry Division in Pleiku.
Thank you so much. Okay. Anybody else before I get up there? Okay.
My name is Philip Balizet. I live here in East Lyme. I was drafted in 1970 and joined the United States Navy and ended up in the submarine service on a diesel submarine and spent 3 patrols off Vietnam from 70 to 73.
I don't know if I'm the only guy that was in the Air Force in here. Anybody else? All right. I was in 62 to 66, school in Mississippi, and then I went to NSA in Washington, went overseas, served in Turkey. Came home, went to Kelly Air Force Base. Didn't like the way people lived in the military, honestly. I wanted to raise a family, so I came home to Niantic. That's it.
All right, anyone? All right, you're volunteering somebody, okay? Anybody else over here? Okay. Hey, Ray. I'm going to hand that to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ray Hackett. Like you, General, I enlisted in the Air Force right out of high school and went overseas. When the Lieutenant Governor was talking, she mentioned how so many veterans, once they finish their service, continue to serve. Today, in this room, it's gentlemen I want to introduce you to. In the 125-year history of the VFW, only 2 Connecticut veterans have ever been elected the National Commander-in-Chief. One of them is right here, Ed Bates. He served as the National Commander-in-Chief, serving veterans and representing them. He's a hell of a guy.
All right. I'll go over on this side. Okay, I'm going to go on just on this side over here in case anybody, would you, okay, here you go.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor. Comrades and friends, I'm going to try to stand up. I am a 18-year resident with my wife of Niantic. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I served there in 1966 and 67 with the military police. I pay a lot of attention to what happens to our veterans from all eras of conflicts and wars. And from my generation, I know how many thousands and thousands of people perished in the Vietnam War. But then I wonder how many hundreds of thousands die a little bit every day from trauma and PTSD and mental health issues. And I reach out to each and every one of you if you know someone or if you're part of any program. Just like the commissioner said, these services are there for you. You know, I believe there's 146 VA veteran hospitals in the United States, and the one in West Haven is ranked number 13. So that shows you that there's premier medical service for each and every one of us, whether we're male or female. On behalf of all the members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States of America, and to each and every one of you, thank you. I have a very simple code that I've lived by: never above you, never beneath you, but always your equal. And I wish each and every one of you a happy holiday, and I'm very, very happy that the state of Connecticut has taken the time to do that for each of us. Thank you very much.
if I can get up. Yeah, my name is Steve Carter. I joined the Navy in 1969 from my hometown of Des Moines, Iowa. And I had a little background in electronics, and I was hoping to get into the electronic field. Instead, they sent me to Vietnam to work on an auxiliary repair ship called the USS Sphinx. Now, when I landed in Saigon, of course, it's a big shock. You know, I mean, you're going from a city of Des Moines to an area where you got sandbags, concertina wire, and machine guns all around. Well, I took a caribou from the next day from Saigon into Dong Tam, where I picked up the boat I was on. And one of the things I'll never forget was on this side of the river, we had a lot of foliage, you know, green leaves and trees. The other side of the river is all barren. So I asked a guy there, I said, how come there's nothing growing over there? He says, oh, that's a free fire zone. And they believed that all the shelling, the bombing, everything like that burned up all the leaves because we didn't know about Agent Orange. And of course, when the bombs explode, dust go in the air and the wind blows, and well, I end up getting it. But no, it's just one of the things I had on a bumper sticker on my car. It says, the Vietnam veterans assure us that no other veteran ever goes unappreciated. Because we know how it felt. And you can always tell someone who's been in Vietnam, he said he's buku diki dow, and he knows what you're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is David Craig, and I finished high school when I was 17, and 2 weeks later, I was in the American Army. And that was 1960, and that period was the Cold War period. I mean, the program here is East Lyme Korean era and Vietnam era. I guess technically we were Vietnam era, but that was kind of starting as we were getting out of the service. But the Cold War, in my case, I was shipped to Germany, and I saw the Berlin Wall go up. I mean, physically saw it go up. It was a barbed wire. And I saw East German soldiers and police shooting unarmed civilians trying to reach freedom in the West, in West Berlin, and getting caught in the barbed wire and being shot. I remember one incident where one of our soldiers, one of the East German soldiers, aimed his rifle at a young couple that was brother and sister maybe, or boyfriend and girlfriend, I don't know. And they were caught in the barbed wire trying to get to freedom. And he aimed his rifle at them, and he was about to shoot them. And a fellow about 50 yards down from me pulled a pin in a hand grenade, one of our soldiers. And he kept his hand on it, and he aimed it right at that soldier, but he didn't throw it. The soldier looked at him, and he looked at, they had a Mexican standoff. And finally the East German soldier put his rifle down, and I said, thank God he put the pin back in the hand grenade. And we all took a big sigh of relief, because we probably would have got hurt too. But that era was now, we were preventing the spread of communism into Western Europe, and now we see that happening all over again, deja vu, with Ukraine and Russia. At that time it was the Soviet Union, trying to flex its muscle. And we were there to prevent them from doing that. And a lot of those soldiers are forgotten. I got there a month before the Berlin Wall was built. My parents were probably, it was in the newspaper, and they were probably scared stiff. We thought it was kind of exciting, but now looking back on it, and being a parent and a grandparent, I can fully understand what they were going through. So don't forget those guys that were in that Cold War also. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else over here? Okay.
Thank you. I'm these Lyme Veterans Representative. I desire that every veteran get the benefits they've been promised. I'm going to thank each and every you veterans for your service, but I'm going to ask you, are you getting the benefits you've been promised? Gentlemen, ladies, the clock is ticking. The saddest thing I experience is a veteran in the autumn of his life not getting the benefits he needs, where he needs hearing aids, glasses, support. The clock is ticking. I sent out a mailer on to everybody here about 10 steps on how I can help a veteran make his life more comfortable. If you have any questions about federal benefits, state benefits, nonprofit organizations, and also your military organizations, please give me a call. I want to make sure you are being taken care of. There's nothing worse than meeting a veteran in the autumn of his life and he's not getting the benefits he's been promised. Thank you. I salute you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Jim Gallagher was in Korea in 1952 in the East C&W Squadron. I figured I just want to get this microphone to say what somebody here was in the Korean War. And I'd be very interested who the other person or persons are to talk to them. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you.
Thank you so much. And if our Korean veteran would like to say something. All right, well, all right, anyone else who would like to share a story? Going once? Did we hear from all the branches? Navy, Marines, we heard from the Air Force, Submarine Service, Coast Guard, anybody? No? All right, well, can we have a round of applause for all of our veterans who shared their stories? And here's what we are going to do. We are going to call our veterans, starting with the Korean veterans first, and then moving on to the Vietnam veterans. And if you somehow snuck in to the auditorium without telling us that you are here, we may not have your name, but we are not going to leave anybody on the battlefield. So we are not going to leave until we have acknowledged and recognized each of the veterans who are here. And I will ask if you would like, we're going to be taking photos right here in front of the flags. If it is easier for you to receive your citation and your pin in your seat, just raise your hand when we call your name and we'll come right to you. Also, the names are in alphabetical order, so those of you who are sitting in the middle, you might want to migrate to the seats in the aisle because it'll be a little easier. And with that, we're going to get started.
Just gonna pass these out. Should be okay. Do you want to help me pass them over? Thank you. Okay. All right. We'll begin with James Gallagher.
Next is the next Korean era veteran is Terry Mitchell. He is here, but he was actually Vietnam. He served in Korea, but in the Vietnam era. Yeah. So, Robert Peace, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. I was going to give it to him anyways, and then just, if that's all right with you too. So, that's the Vietnam. We'll now recognize the Vietnam era veterans in attendance, beginning with Frederick Altwater. Frederick Altwater. All right. Next is David Anderson. All right over here, sir. Robert Andrews. Mr. Avery. Be followed by Kenneth Avery. Followed by Philip Balazet. Edward Banis. Joseph Barry. Robert Benfeld. Paul Bodenhofer. Jerry Brown. William Bennett Bullock II. Stephen Bunin. Brian Burridge. For him, I have just, it's just one of these. Yeah. Yeah, I have Ralph's. Yeah. Ralph Cardone. Stephen Carter. Anthony Cassio. Edward Cody Jr. David Craig. Christine Crawford and William Crawford.
Oh my goodness, now you have to tell it. All right, so we have a couple, so do tell the story.
Okay, well, I was hesitant to do so, but I was a Navy nurse during the Vietnam War. I did not serve in the country, although I volunteered about 5 times to go to Vietnam. But I did sent to the Great Lakes Naval Hospital in Illinois, and there I met my husband of 57 years. He had just returned from Vietnam, having served there with the Marines of the 3rd Division, Bill. Anyway, he served as the medical physician serving the Marine Corps. The Navy always served as the medical help for the Marines. And so I met him there. He had just come back. And yeah, so here we are. So,
And I'm going to see if he agrees with everything she said.
It's all correct.
Excellent. Good answer. Thank you so much, both of you, for your service to our country.
Thank you.
And also, I am told a Bronze Star recipient, Mr. Crawford. Thank you so, Dr. Crawford, thank you so much.
Eugene Cushman. Donald Danilla. John DeSantis. Robert Eddy Jr. Bruce Elam. Robert Elms. Gary Fatone.
It's not Gary, it's Guy.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. Harry Farrell. Edwin Foster. Wayne Gates. James Germain. Joseph Gazzino. James Groves.
I didn't speak earlier, and technically, I never served in Vietnam, but I served during that period, and I served in the Cold War as a underground warrior in the Air Force. But the thing that I want to say particularly that I'm really thinking about right now, and perhaps there are a number of you that are in the same situation. My wife, Carolyn, and I both joined the Air Force in 1966. And we went in together, and one of the interesting things was she was an Air Force nurse, and she outranked me the entire time we were in the Air Force.
And continues.
And unfortunately, she's not here. 7 years ago, she passed, and 7 years ago this month, we laid her to rest at Arlington National Cemetery. And she's waiting there for me.
Thank you so much.
Earl Greskoff, Jr. Raymond Hackett. John Hallisey. Jonathan Harger. David Hausman. James Indorado. Albert Jablonski, Jr. David Jacobs. Ronald Johnson. Marvin Kelly III. Arthur Keebler. Robert Lagadka. Alan LeBlanc. Salvatore Marino. James McCormick. Douglas Medley. Michael Mines. Salvatore Mirable. David Mosey. Roger Nadu.
Both Korea and Vietnam. Oh my goodness, well, we're so happy that you're here. Thank you so much. A Korean and Vietnam veteran.
Robert Newton. Charles Opolenic. Kevin O'Connor. Robert O'Connor.
Robert Ouellette. Albert Ouellette. Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Alan Peace. John Ronelli. Anthony Skorek. Alexander Tade. Jeffrey Vanell. William Volmar. Christopher Wazak. Absolutely. Yeah, I can scan the list too. Nor my Scrabble notes, but close enough to it. Victor Weltig. Robert Williamson. Are there any Korean era or Vietnam era veterans from East Lyme whose name we have not yet called? Fred Altvater. The other duty. Are there any other veterans whose name we have not called? All right.
Okay. All right. We will conclude the ceremony shortly, but I'll ask one more time, is there any other Vietnam or Korea veteran that we have not recognized yet? Got everyone? All right. We have one person who would like to say a few words.
I'm retired Master Sergeant Brown from the United States Marine Corps, and I'll give you something to take home tonight. I taught school here in this town from 1974 to 1990. So if you have a son or daughter that went to the junior high, I taught the shop classes. At the time, all students there were required to take industrial arts, they called it. I also taught at the high school back and forth. So if you have a son or daughter that during that period of time, 1974 to 90, I probably was their teacher in those shop classes. And it could have been a granddaughter or a grandson even later. I had the honor of 3 times being on the front page of the New London Day. Once as a teacher, once as a Marine, and once as a runner. I ran with these gentlemen right over here. We carried the flags all the way from Stonington down to Clinton. For a little background on my military career, I signed up in 1963 on November the 22nd, if anybody knows what that date is. That's the date that President Kennedy was killed. I just was riding home from signing the paperwork. I went to Vietnam in 1966-67. I was in the helicopter group, Mag 16, flying all the way from Da Nang to the DMZ and back, and I hit every little Marine Corps place there was, and a few Army places in between. I'm also a veteran of Desert Storm in 1990. Again, I was on the front page of New London Day when we was leaving New Haven out of the reserves. I went back in 2003 to Iraq again. Again, I was on the front page of the paper a few times. It was an honor. I was honored to serve with a lot of you guys here. So if you have any relatives that were during that period of time here at East Lyme High School, they probably know me. So I just thought I'd give you a little something to take home and find out about it. But I got a history of the Marine Corps and the federal government that goes way back. I got a lot of friends at Arlington Cemetery. I hope to join them someday. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's very lovely. I can't promise you'll be on the front page of the paper again. All right. Can we have a round of applause for all of our wonderful Korean and Vietnam veterans? All right. So a couple of housekeeping things. If you would like to see the photos that we took of each of the veterans, you can go to the Lieutenant Governor's Flickr page. And the web address is at the back of your program. And if you have any difficulty finding it, just ask your grandkids. They will be very happy to show you where it is. Also, if we made a spelling error on your citation, just let us know before you leave. And if we did not know you were coming, we will make sure that we get a citation to you. If you did not RSVP, we will make sure that you get a citation. So with that, I'm going to invite the color guards to retire the colors. And if you would please rise for the retirement of the colors.
Color guard, halt, right face, retrieve the colors. Color guard, left face. Color guard, forward, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been a privilege to meet all of our veterans and your families, and we hope you have a safe trip home and a wonderful holiday season with your families. Thank you so much.